Welcome back to Askewed Reviews, and this week we are doing Christmas movies, and today we are doing the 1994 film Mixed Nuts. Here is your trivia question for today. What is the name of the suicide prevention hotline that Philip runs? The answer will be at the end of this episode. So at the beginning of our film, it's Christmas Eve and we're in Los Angeles, California, and we meet our main character, Philip. Philip runs a suicide prevention hotline, along with two ladies that work alongside him, Catherine and Mrs. Munchnick. Also in the same building as his office are some interesting neighbors, like Louis and Mr. Lobel. There are also some interesting friends that come to visit, like Gracie and Felix. And of course, we can't forget the very interesting callers, like Chris and this guy. And it's not only all of these individuals that are going to make Philip's day difficult and interesting. His fiancée Susan has also decided to call and not only break up with him over the phone, but notify him that she's cheating on him. And of course, to make things just a little bit more interesting, there is also a serial killer on the loose called the Seaside Strangler, and who knows where they could be. So, in the end, will all of these quirky individuals be able to have a Merry Christmas? This movie was directed by Nora Ephron. She also managed to sneak a little cameo into the film, as she is actually the voice of the LA Times automated phone responder that Philip is dealing with at one point. Now, the screenplay for this film was actually co written by Nora Ephron and her sister Delia. But this is actually a remake of a 1982 French film that, when translated into English, is Santa Claus is a Stinker. Also, Mixed Nuts was not actually the original title for this film, as it was going to be called The Night Before Christmas. The movie takes place in Los Angeles, California, and all of the exterior shots are actually filmed there, but almost all of the interior shots are filmed in New York City, New York. Mixed Nuts was actually one of 5 Christmas films that was actually released in 1994, and most of them were actually pretty successful. You had The Ref, The Santa Claus, the remake of Miracle on 34th Street, and Trapped in Paradise. Steve Martin and Rita Wilson were highly entertaining in this film, although I do feel some of their scenes they really overacted it. Madeline Kahn also appears in this film, and she is very entertaining each and every time she's on screen. Did you happen to notice, though, that at one point her character of Mrs. Munchnick is reading a magazine called Distress? Now, what's interesting about this is in the 1982 French film, the actual suicide prevention hotline is called SOS Distress. Both Juliette Lewis and Anthony LaPaglia do a great job as the characters of Gracie and Felix. But did you happen to know that those characters were originally considered for two other actors, Rosie Perez and Kadeem Hardison? Adam Sandler appears in this film as Louis. This is one of his earlier roles where he tried to branch out after Saturday Night Live. But this also would be the last film before his career would skyrocket with the movie Billy Madison. Also, probably not a surprise to most people who are aware of Sandler's musical career, but he not only is playing the ukulele in this film, but he wrote and sang all of the songs that he played. This movie is actually Liev Schreiber's theatrical film debut as the character of Chris. Schreiber has a great story that the first time he met Steve Martin for this production was when they actually wanted to start working on the dance number. Now, unfortunately for Schreiber, he was only wearing boxers and sweatpants, and due to the type of dance they were doing, Martin's leg kept rubbing against his crotch, so unfortunately, he actually got an erection while the two of them were practicing, and this, of course, was the first time that he met Steve Martin. What's interesting, though, is before Schreiber, the character of Chris was offered to Chris Farley, who turned it down. Gary Shandling plays the sleazy landlord Stanley Tannenbaum. What's interesting about this is in German, the word Tannenbaum means tree. And of course, what's funny about that is by the end of the film, Gary Shandling's character is turned into a Christmas tree. Speaking of trees, did you happen to recognize the two rollerbladers that were carrying the tree throughout the film? They were Jon Stewart and Parker Posey. Comedian Stephen Wright has a cameo early on in the film as the man in the phone booth. Well-known director and writer Rob Reiner has a cameo in the film as well as Dr. Kinski. There's also a funny routine that Reiner has in the film about his girlfriend having too many pillows on the bed. That routine would actually be used once again in the film Along Came Polly between Ben Stiller and Jennifer Aniston. Dr. Kinski's girlfriend Vanessa was actually played by Reiner's actual wife, Michelle Reiner. A young Haley Joel Osment also appears in this movie as the small boy near the end of the film who points out Felix's Santa climbing the side of the building. So when it comes to the film Mixed Nuts, I really like this movie. It's quirky, it's funny, it's a little weird, but I will say it's maybe not for everybody. So I think I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5. And if you did enjoy this film, other movies I would recommend checking out that have a similar feel would be Empire Records, Airheads, Noises Off, and Clue. Now, as for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode, what is the name of the suicide prevention hotline that Philip runs? The hotline is aptly named Lifesavers. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, and if there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments.